So here's our app. When the user logs in, we should send a post request to the auth endpoint of our backend. Our backend, in this case, our node server, validates the email and password. And if they're valid, it returns what we call an authentication token, or auth token for short. It's like an ID card, like a passport or a driver's license. In reality, it's just a long string that's been encrypted and digitally signed. We'll talk about it in more detail later. So we receive the auth token. Now from this token, we can extract basic information about the user, like their user ID, their name, and email. In the same way, we can look at someone's passport and get some basic information like their name, place of birth, and so on. So we extract a user object from the auth token and then store it in the app component. So in the app component, we should have a state variable called user. Now, if the user exists, we're going to render app navigator. So that will take the user to the home screen of the app. Otherwise, if the user is null, we're going to render auth navigator to take the user to the welcome screen. Now let's say somewhere in our app, like the account screen, we need to access the current user object that is stored in the app component. We don't want to pass this object down to every component in the component tree. That's a bad practice, and there's actually a name for it. It's called prop drilling, because it involves drilling a hole or a prop at every level in our component tree. Now John is back and says, okay then, we need Redux. No, we don't. We can use React Context. It's a lot simpler. Using React Context, we can provide an object in our app component, and any component in our app will be able to consume this object. So does it mean React Context replaces Redux and Redux is no longer needed? No, it doesn't. Context is suitable for sharing small objects that don't change often, like our user object. Once the user logs in, the user object is not going to get changed, right? If you share a large object with React Context, any changes to this object will cause your entire component tree to re-render. So even if a component is not interested in the changed properties, it will get re-rendered. For sharing large objects that change frequently, you should use Redux. With Redux, components can subscribe to the Redux store, and they will get re-rendered only when the data relevant to them get changed, okay? So next, we're going to implement the navigation aspect of the authentication flow.